Point, an inspiring attraction to visitors from all walks of life. The most southwesterly extremity of Africa, it juts into the ocean to form the protective bastion sheltering the west coast of False Bay from the Atlantic rollers that crash thunderously onto the jagged rocks at its base far below. It was described by Sir Francis Drake as the fairest cape in the circumference of the globe when he called here on his voyage around the world in the year 1580. A timeless sea still beats in on rock and beach as it must have then, and seabirds scream shrilly as they ride the air currents that eddy around the towering cliffs. It is indeed the fairest cape. From Buffalo's Bay, the cape appears less stark. The waters of the bay more sheltered, and little bays and inlets within Greater False Bay provide wonderful areas for the skindiver to operate in. Like here at Smithsfinkel Bay, where the sea is rarely rough under the protection of the majestic Hell's Gate headland rising in the background. One could, I suppose, call False Bay the cradle of South African skindiving. For it was in these very waters, around the 1940s, that Cape divers for the first time timidly ventured underseas. We've come a long way since those early modern skindiver is, like all users of the sea, subject to the dictates of the forces of nature. And when the Cape of Storms lives up to its name and the southeast gales send huge breakers lashing the shores of False Bay, the little ships of the fishing fleet must prudently ride out the storm at their moorings, and men can but stand and watch. When finally the winds abate, seabirds gather to harvest the many tidbits uncovered by the waves. A tragic aftermath of this storm was the breaking up of the coast of Bulwark on the reefs of Danger Point, less than a mile from the wreck of the famous Birkenhead. Whilst near Cape Point, this tunny boat was cast high on the jagged rocks, the sea reclaiming its own as several tons of tunny were washed out of the broken hull into the sea whence it came. The method used by this type of commercial fishing boat to catch tunny is by means of the Japanese long line, which is simply a series of baited hooks, set out on a heavy line suspended from plastic buoys or floats. The tunny hook themselves. Not so dissimilar to those stranded wrecks is this beached whale shark, as it lies equally forlorn and helpless at the mercy of the waves. Another name for this fish is basking shark. This is not a fully grown specimen, being a mere 25 feet long, so it may be that it was injured by a boat whilst sunning itself on the surface. Slowly the calm returns, and we are once more able to enter the reflective sea, rather like Alice through the looking glass, into a submarine wonderland. Since time immemorial, man has speculated about this underwater world of mystery and shadow, hidden from view by the restless surface of the sea. Truly a thing to marvel at, a world all its own, unexplored and feared, inhabited in man's imagination by all manner of weird creatures. For although many generations of people throughout the world have harvested a wealth of marine life from its depths, little has been known of its extent or what it contains. It will be a long time yet before the oceans in their vastness can be fully explored and all they hold recorded, if ever it can be done. For even here in the shallower reaches, something new is encountered on almost every dive. scarlet-jacketed Roman, a common fish in the Cape. A duckbill ray wings its way over the seabed. A young red stumpnose. As it ages, its head will develop the characteristic hump from which it gets its name. The Medusa jellyfish is a single-celled creature with powerful stings suspended below its skirt. These Calhoun rely on agility and speed to avoid their enemies, of which seals are the commonest. They invariably put on a show of acrobatics, and what better performers could one find than these supple, streamlined gymnasts? Shark, terror of the seas, sleek and streamlined, a menace to most marine life, and of course, man. A net full of harders. For them, the axiom safety in numbers really means something, as they play follow my leader. The ubiquitous milkfish. These streepies rarely exceed 6 inches in length when fully grown. The red Roman as a species are among the easiest of fish to approach. They are equipped with quite large teeth for crunching up mussels, etc., which they swallow, shells and all. The sea hereabouts must... This strange-looking object is a cuttlefish, hovering rather like a flying saucer. It is from this creature that we get the cuttlebone that canaries love to peck. It was so frightened it gave up its dinner whilst I held it in my hand. Angled on target, and hit hard by the spear, the fish is killed almost instantly. It is retrieved by means of the line attached to the spear. The sea is much more prolific in marine life than most people imagine. Shoals such as these are quite common. Calhoun or black bream are usually found in shoals of up to 30 or more, and a good sporting fish from the angler's point of view. With just a flick of the tail, these fish can turn in their own length, a bit frustrating for the spearfisherman. We divers have the best of both worlds, that of the fishes and that of the animals and birds, and how easy the transition from the one to the other. One can hardly blame these dakers for being nervous at the sight of a cyclops rising from the sea. Yet, whilst one is admiring the above-water scenery, a shark may well be cruising just underfoot unseen. Strange how so graceful a creature can make one's flesh creep, but we are always tempted to have a go at one. It's not so difficult to get a shot in on one of these. The difficult part comes in handling the brute. The shark has no true bones in its skeleton, which is cartilaginous, and is extremely flexible as a result of this. Its teeth lie flat in its mouth when closed, but become erect when the mouth is opened. I had quite a job keeping the business end of this one facing away from me. From the bottom, divers on the surface above look like human kites aloft. The sensation of weightlessness underwater gives a feeling of exhilaration as one glides along as if airborne. Abundant in these underwater gardens are many delicacies to tempt the gourmet, such as this Cape rock lobster or crayfish, the capture and export of which has grown into a large industry in the Cape. Away again over the seabed, to disturb a ray at rest in the protective shallows. One must take care not to startle it too much, for it is a very timid fish, although it has a poison barb for protection above the base of the long rat-like tail, for this is a stingray. The creature's mouth is underneath its body and contains 30 or more rows of tiny teeth. Its method of breathing is to take in water through its gills just behind the mouth, expelling it through spiracles just behind the eyes. However, the larder must be filled, so another fish is taken and added to the fish holder. Safety precautions, spear guns are always loaded and unloaded in the water. This is a rule for all diving club members. Although the fish landed are not very large, they make up for this in tastiness and flavor. The scaling of fish is best done when they are fresh out of the sea, as otherwise the scales would harden and become difficult to get off. The eastern shore of False Bay, looking towards Roy Else, is a diver's ideal coastline, with its broken submerged reefs sheltered from the open sea. Underwater, the reefs take on a completely different appearance, as does the diver's suit, which is made of neoprene sponge, which, although it lets water in contact with the skin, keeps the diver warm. The shallows support a life of vegetation, for example, kelp, on which shellfish eternally feed. small children love to eat. And these Hottentot will eat almost anything, from weed and crustaceans to each other. I invited them to a rare banquet of redbait, cut from the leather-like pod, just for the pleasure of watching them enjoy it. The salmon pink flesh so beloved by all bottom feeders is actually the stomach of the redbait pod. Shadowy, eerie place, the kelp jungle gives one the impression of many hidden eyes watching from the dark grottos and glades. The fish that resembles the star from which it gets its name is unchanged. We know this from fossils dug up of its ancestors of 1 million years ago, when oceans covered much of what is now dry land. I return it to carry on its function. Our prayerful friends the seals are never far away. When these chaps take off, they rival rockets. The explosive effect is caused by air bubbles trapped in their fur being left behind as they shoot forward. Seals have dog-like teeth, which could be a hazard to divers. They do appear menacing at times, but haven't as yet bitten us. For all the world like soaring in a constellation of stars. Curiosity prompted me to offer a dead fish to the seals to note their reaction. It seemed they were not as hungry as they were wary, and although they had tentative sniffs at the fish, not one could be induced to take it. Although these mammals can stay underwater for long periods, they still have to surface for air. They exit as they enter, clowning. The most decorative things can be found on the seabed. A bit tough to break off, perhaps, but worth the effort is this brachia. The brilliant red of this growth does not fade out of the water, strangely enough. I've never been sure whether the octopus is so confident it can't be seen due to its camouflage that it stays put, or whether it's just plain scared stiff. Anyone can have a dog as a pet, but not everyone would want an octopus snuggling at their feet. The octopus swims by using a form of jet propulsion. taking in water which is expelled by muscular contraction, thereby thrusting the animal forward. After a while, it refused to play anymore and shammed dead. We were keen to note this one's reaction to being removed from the water, as sometimes they leave the sea of their own accord to move from pool to pool. It was so attached to me by this time that I couldn't get rid of it. I feel it was no mistake that it ended up where I couldn't reach it. Keeping this squirming, wriggling mass on one's knee is as hard as handling a soapy baby just out of its bath. However, in spite of this, we managed to count suckers, noted beak, mouth and other points, and made notes for record purposes before returning it to the sea. Watch closely as it submerges. The inky fluid it emits is the marine equivalent of a protective smokescreen. Now find me if you can. A bouquet fit for any mermaid. A shark's egg pouch was attached to these fronds. Unfortunately, it was empty. The animal in this shell is 90% foot. The rest is its stomach. We were lucky to find a live embryo shark in its egg pouch attached to this brachia. Note the wriggling baby joined to the egg by its umbilical cord. On this egg, which is really a super stomach, it will feed until strong enough to bite its way to freedom. There is always so much that is new. Many natural treasures are deep down and hidden from casual eyes. Even the jeweler's art is no rival to nature's beautiful adornment, made for who knows what reason here on the bed of the ocean. From beauty to the beast. Seems he has a previous engagement, maybe for lunch. To catch a fish, many are the methods used, but this must surely be one of the most humane. The shot fish is dead within seconds. Stomach contents of all fish are noted and records kept for reference and research purposes. Often on the fish's menu are these whitebait. The oceans are full of surprises and mysteries. This weed-grown castle turned out on closer inspection to be the wreck of quite a large ship, whose name we never did discover. It's probable that some of its crew struggled in these very waters, and some may even have drowned. It strains the imagination to think that this inert mass of twisted pipes and tangled metal was once the engine room of a throbbing, pulsating ship. Unconcerned seals swim over decks that sailors once trod, but these agile types are only interested in the business of living, of eating, of mating, and of course, clowning. Seals beware, for these sharks are real killers of the deep, 12-footers at least. These brutes are not to be confused with a striped dog shark, which is as short-sighted as a mole, so much so that it's not hard to catch one by the tail, but not so easy to hold it. Hardly the thing to disturb a chap's Saturday afternoon nap. I couldn't really blame him if he bit me. Having had relative success catching the little ones, I was tempted to try it on his big chap. This film might have ended right here. At the end of this fractured airline, a tough professional diver works to fill his net with perlemoen shellfish, which are canned in factories located along the coast and exported to the Far East. This pair of crayfish have been lured into a fisherman's net by the free meal provided. But they do have a sporting chance when the trap is raised. Not a very efficient method. More hit, less miss than the net method is obtained with the Skindiver spear gun. Careful aim is taken, and in a short matter of a minute the fish can be shot and killed, then transferred to the fish holder worn on the wrist. The competent spearfisherman gets enough fish to fill his quota in one good outing lasting about 2 hours.